Hi, I'm Callie, and today I'm going to talk to you about Charlotte Perkins Gilman's novel, Herland. Charlotte Perkins Gilman is most prominently known for her visceral short story, The Yellow Wallpaper. The work touches on the female perspective and what life was like for a woman in the late 19th century. The short story uses graphic imagery to expose the problematic approaches and attitudes that were common regarding women's mental health. The 1915 utopian novel, Herland, is told from the perspective of a male student who embarks on a journey with two of his friends to find an alleged community comprised solely of women. Already skeptical, the three men imagine what life must be like in the community. Based solely on their preconceived notions of women, the narrator's companions present their theories. One of the men argues that the women would be disorganized and primitive, while the other argues that they would be as peaceful and harmonious as nuns. Much to their surprise, the women in the community are physically and mentally their superiors. They demonstrate confidence, patience, kindness, and curiosity toward their captives. Both the men and women take the time to learn from each other. After they earn some trust, the men discover that the women have been existing without men for thousands of years. In the absence of men, the women focus on improving themselves and raising their children. Because of this focus on self-improvement, the most respected position is teaching. Eventually, the men start to develop romantic relationships. The three men have different reactions to the fact that their mates don't fall into the gender roles that they're used to. Two of the men are able to accept their differences, but the third eventually tries to rape his partner. It is during his friend's trial when we discover that the narrator isn't quite as evolved as we think. When confronted with his friend's crime, he says, "Oh come, that's a pretty hard word for it. After all, Alima was his wife, you know." In Herland, Gilman attempts to tackle an issue that is ever present in contemporary society: gender roles. Bernice Hausman highlights the importance of recognizing the fact that pre-gender feminists use the term sex in the way that contemporary society uses gender. She cites Gilman's use of sex in Herland as being instrumental in helping us understand the feminist intent. Ibasi and Moslehi argue that Gilman overturns the self-other dualism of patriarchal religion. This is very similar to the dualism that Simone de Beauvoir references in her iconic work, The Second Sex. In the book, she explains that women are defined in relation to men. Women are the other to a man's self. She says, "Representation of the world as the world itself is the work of men. They describe it from a point of view that is their own and that they confound with the absolute truth." In fact, Hudak tells us that Gilman actually believed women to be the superior sex. She believed that it was the female and not the male who should be regarded as the race type or the physical example of humanity in its general and thus sexless form. In other words, women should be the self and men the other. She theorized that it was women's economic dependence on men that prevented this dynamic from existing. Like any other author, Gilman faces some criticisms. Evans argues that she reinforces the fundamental nature of society by centering her utopia on children. Her character says, "The children in this country are the one center and focus of all our thoughts. Every step of our advance is always considered in its effect on them, on the race. You see, we are mothers." It could be argued that Gilman is placing her society into the ultimate female gender role, motherhood. Green points out that even Gilman herself allowed her daughter to be cared for by her ex-husband. Considering the fact that Gilman was insistent on being defined by her work, it seems odd that the spectacular women of Herland would put such an emphasis on their status as mothers. Despite the criticisms, Charlotte Perkins Gilman sparked an important conversation. Her ideas about gender roles were radical at the time, and she never let society stop her from pursuing her goals.